Hi, folks. I'm Daniel Meeks, and I will be reading excerpt number 1 from a book called First Sight by author Chun Jing Yuan. Now, this is a story about Neanderthal hybrids who traveled to ancient Egypt for work and the adventure and intrigue that ensues. So, without further ado, here we go. 1. Selu. My mind's eye hovered hundreds of man-heights above ground. The sight below made me dizzy. It was a sprawling mass of stone, wood, water, and greenery. Its size, however, was not what made my head spin. It was the design of the city itself that defied belief. Concentric circles. The main city was ringed by 3 moats, divided so by land masses that cut clean through them. Walls had been built on both the inner and outer sides of these neatly formed circles of earth. The water lapped against the walls themselves without any semblance of a shore to pass over, and they appeared to house smaller cities of their own. The inner circle was walled in the same manner. My attention turned to the little blips that dotted the water. Ships, manned by hundreds of men. Some entered the geometrical wonder through an inlet to the southwest, while others followed the same path out into the sea. I heard the sounds of clinking metal and followed the noise to watch one of the ships make its way through a fort along the outer circle and emerge on the middle moat. After admiring the snailing vessels in their enclosures, I turned my attention to what lay within the walls. The circles contained houses, parks, forts, and who knew what else. I judged that by foot it would take barely half a day to cross from one end of the city to the other, moats included. Selu, I heard my father telepath, snapping me out of sleep and my vision. I need you here, now. Yes, on the way, I told him as I pulled my covers off. It was a lovely summer morning, and I basked in the sunlight streaming through the windows as I got dressed and left the cottage. I knew Father was at the cove from the impression in his telepathic message. He had not felt overly concerned, just insistent. Whatever was happening, he wanted me there for it. I thought about the meaning of the dream as I rode. I was no stranger to visions. Did this mean that Vega was telling the truth? Vega was long dead, but he had loved telling stories of his travels during my childhood. I had dismissed his tale of Atlantis. However, reasoning that unless some magic that even my ancestors could not wield had been applied, there was surely no way that any people could have shaped geography to their will like that, and nature rarely, if ever, provides such perfect geometry. Maybe it was just a dream, an imaginative one. The beach soon came to view. A ship was moored in the sand, larger than any of our vessels, long and slim, with rows of oars sticking out of its sides. Several figures stood some distance from it, my father among them. "Good morning," I greeted the group. My father and some of the townspeople were playing host to several men whom I assumed had landed on our shores in the large ship. The one who looked like the leader was tall and copper-skinned with a narrow face and a well-trimmed beard. His clothes were finer than those of the others. They were all dressed in sheer materials that did not cover their arms. Their lower garments were merely flaps that flowed to their heels with slits at the sides that showed their upper thighs and calves. The leader looked up at me and smiled. I returned the gesture and dismounted. I noticed a man who looked like a native of the Serpent Coast standing subserviently to his side. An interpreter, most likely. "This is my son, Selu," my father said as I approached the group. The interpreter exchanged words with the visitor and replied, "Well met, Selu. This is Morintar, emissary of the kingdom of Hometz from across the Marble Sea." Morintar and his retinue bowed in my direction. I returned the bow, and Morintar went back into conversation with my father and the townspeople. It appeared that Morintar and his crew had come in hopes of opening up a trade route between the regional power in Serpent's Mouth, the name of the cove we were speaking in. Nowhere else along the coast would his people's ships be able to land, due to the inhospitality of the terrain. That made sense. The Serpent Coast is a winding, jagged series of cliffs, except at its mouth, and we were the regional power. Men carrying large chests off their ship soon neared us. Morintar made way for them, and the chests were placed on the ground and opened. Precious metals, spices, and all manner of riches were showcased. Father was unmoved, but I watched our men and women look more alert all of a sudden. "What would we have to offer in return?" Father asked. "Your hunters bring in hides and tusks, and your miners provide sturdy metals for worthy tools. Even your fishermen offer exotic shells and bones that my people would pay well for," Morintar said encouragingly. Father nodded casually. Yes, I suppose you should take a tour of our tribe lands. See if we have anything else of value. Maybe we can lengthen the list of wares to trade." Morintar nodded delightedly. "Come, we will host you and your crew tonight," my father announced. I watched my townspeople break into smiles of excitement. My father led the way, taking our people and our visitors towards a path that led from the beach to our town. I leisurely followed the big group, keeping several paces behind everyone. Some way into the journey, however, my father allowed a senior couple to engage Morintar and gradually fell back to where I trailed after everyone. "Interesting-looking bunch," I commented. "I'll bet the place they come from is even more interesting," Father replied, with a glint in his eye. "I know that look," I said, smirking. "We're going to visit that place," Father announced. I almost laughed aloud. "How?" I knew that it was not a matter of whether or not we would do it, but how and when. "We'll go on that nice ship of theirs," Father said simply. "And they'll take us?" "If they want our business, they will." "And you think the council will be all right with letting you go?" I challenged. "Their chieftain. Across the vast Marble Sea." "Yes, their chieftain, and his son and heir," Father said. "Across the perilous Marble Sea." I laughed. "Should we take Scylla with us?" "If she wants to go," Father said, shrugging. "She'll want to prepare for the summer festival." "Yeah," I agreed. I thought about the feasts and festivities. It was only weeks away now. If you drag me with you, I'd better be back in time for it. When we arrived in town, a committee was immediately organized to show our visitors around and decide upon what we could trade. 20 skilled men and women from every line held discussions with Morintar and his aides throughout the day. My cousins Scylla and Solun returned from their hunt at 3 hours past noon. Well, that's all, folks. Actually, there's a lot more. And you can hear it by listening to the next excerpt. Or you can get the book on Amazon. The link is down below. Third option, you can go to the YouTube channel Formlessness for more information.